still got it over there, and I intend to plunge back into it one day, probably when I'm in a nursing home and have the time. Of course,
Yeah,
then I'll be too,
yeah, it's going to be intense when
won't have the
this
brain to be able to do it.
generation of board game collectors moves into nursing homes with like forklift trucks. No, I've been
We've only
waiting my
got
whole
little
life for
rooms.
this moment.
Don't fit them. Gonna have to take tiny games into nursing homes. Hello, everybody. It's Peter here from the Esoteric Order of Gamers, and that's Mike Hutchinson, the incredibly talented creator of such wonderful games as Gaslands, A Billion Suns, Hobgoblin, and many, many others that I can't think of right now, but there are lots. And we've had a chat before in the past, and we're going to have a chat again about miniatures and gaming and just stuff. So settle back, grab yourself a drink. I've got half a beer, and enjoy. Mike, mate.
Hello there, Peter. Nice to hang out again.
Yes, yes, and I really do like that purple light you've got in the background. I have to get with the program and get myself a nice coloured light in the background.
Well, I'm a YouTuber now, so you've got to have colourful lights all over the place.
True, and in fact,
I'm actually quite enjoying. I'm quite enjoying making videos on the regular. I haven't given myself any specific schedule, but
yeah.
I'm trying to get one out every week. And
I'm just looking at your page. It's right behind me on the screen here, and it's just looks really impressive. You're churning them out.
thank you. Well, it's nice because what I have crafted for myself is a very personal and ramshackle brand where whatever falls out of Mike's brain is the thing that I put on the internet. That works
Excellent.
for
Well,
me.
I've been doing that for 12 years, so
Yeah, exactly.
join the club. Whatever falls out of our brains.
Yeah, I've been,
It could
been
be all
taking notes.
professional, and we could make it look as though we had huge budgets and all that kind of thing, but really I can't be buggered. And also, we've got to make a living, so you can't spend all your time making YouTube videos
No,
because there's only a tiny group of people right up the top there making enough money to survive on them.
that's absolutely right. Yeah, no, I'm now full time on making games. I like making videos. When I was a wee laddie coming out of university, I wanted to cut video in either film or television, and so I learned the
Yeah,
craft of editing.
video. We had Super 8 back in my day. It's video business. We had it on film. We had to cut the film and stick it together with sticky tape.
When I was at university, we were cutting digitally on these Avid machines, but you had to turn them off every 45 minutes. And
Sorry, was that a cranking motion?
exactly, the tech would be like, leave it off for 5 minutes for the RAM to clear, and then you have to turn it back on again, and then we turn them back on again. Anyway, so I have a worry that I spend too much time cutting my YouTube videos or like working on them. They're not very good, by the way, but like I have a proclivity to spend slightly too much time because I like working in a video editing thing. But it's like, no, time management. You're supposed to be writing
Yes.
games. That's the thing.
Oh, it's a rabbit hole. You can just go so far down. And next you know, you're wearing costumes or something, and it's all over.
Making hats.
I just did a little video on Fury of Dracula, the history of Fury of Dracula, because I'm trying to cover a few of my older favorites and things as well. And never at any point did I feel the urge to put on plastic teeth and wear a cape. Never.
You're just not that kind of filmmaker, Peter.
Just not. And also, I feel like my job is not to be a comedian. I'm not a comedian. I mean, occasionally something funny comes out of my mouth, but I'm not going to pretend I'm a comedian.
Yeah, that's not your shtick.
It sounds very critical, doesn't it, of other channels? But I don't mean.
Well, some people are funnier.
Yeah,
I also really love I also really love Fury of Dracula. I flip-flop between Fury of Dracula and Scotland Yard for like what it is that I like most in hidden movement games, but I think
now I didn't realize that Scotland Yard came quite a bit before Fury of Dracula, so we could probably say that it really influenced FOD in quite a big
I
way.
should have thought so, yeah, because it's like taking Scotland Yard and just dripping all kinds of extra thematic stuff over it and lots of cards and more mechanics and stuff, which if you're in the if you're in the mood for a slightly heavier game, it's definitely the preferable choice. But like with my family, at Christmas. Scotland Yard will come out.
Yeah, that's pretty good considering it was like 1983 or something. So it's had a
Yeah.
long run. Look, we started talking about your channel and everything. So let's talk about what you've been doing. I've been away for a month, so I don't know what you've been doing. So let me know. Catch me up.
So for the gentle viewer at home, having done a few minis games in my spare time, I'd been angling to take miniature games design full time for a few years, and the opportunity came up last year as a result of a bunch of different forces coming together. But at the end of the year, I quit my job, quit my career, and started work on tabletop miniature games design full time. And my sort of focus has been split over the last few months between um, having got out from underneath an employment contract which restricted me from creating new IP. I am now able to create and put into the world things that I invent. And oh my goodness, that's been such a great feeling. So I've been trying to sort of temper myself a little bit, because I don't just want to go, blah, here's all of my ideas, everyone, blah, blah, blah. But I sort of do as well. And so I've been trying to find a way to do that at the same time as planning what my maybe first big proper Kickstarter thing, where I figure out how Planet Smasher Games is going to put sort of miniature agnostic miniature games into people's hands, and I've got some good ideas for that, but it's not kind of kicked off, because the last thing I'm working on is I've got a few book deadlines that I already had lined up, and so I'm finishing those commitments up this month. But working on the new ideas has been the thing that's the most exciting for me, and so I've been trying to figure out what's my sort of process for getting those to people early on in the process. And so I've set up an itch.io page, and I'm using that as like a, when I finish something in a kind of prototype form, as long as it's consumable and self-contained, then I'll stick
You'll
it
have
up
to
on
explain
itch for
to
$5.
the readers at home what an itch is.
Itch is well, it's a community game publishing site. It's like a self-publishing site for it started as video games, so it's got like workflows for putting up video games that you have created, but they have an increasing sort of community of tabletop, particularly RPG makers on there. And there is a small underbelly of miniatures game designers on itch as well. So for me, I'll be quite specific and a little bit critical. I had a specific tactic that I want to use, which is I want to build a Patreon. I want to increase my kind of Patreon supporters, because I've been building that for many years as part of the Friends of Gaslands scheme. And so I wanted, of course, to offer anyone who's already dropping a cup of coffee to me a month, I wanted to give them access to my prototype games for free. I mean, I'm not going to double charge you, but Drive-Through RPG has some quite specific terms about not offering the same product at different prices in different places, which is fine and I understand, but it also doesn't work for me as a small creator wanting to be a bit more flexible. Itch is more flexible in that regard, and also Itch and Patreon have like a technical integration. So if you like log into both of them, it just knows that you'll support me on Patreon.
I will, of course, put all the links in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and think that sounds fascinating, I must go and check it out.
Yeah. But Itch is cool. And so Itch is like a self-publishing, I'm treating it like a self-publishing platform with a bit of discovery, and people can follow me. So it's kind of like.
But you can get all the same stuff on the Patreon channel if you sign up.
Yeah, there's ways and means. Yeah. So if I publish something on Itch, you get access to it if you're a Patreon.
Right.
Basically the thing there. And so that's cool, because now when I've got an idea, because quite often I'll get an idea for a miniatures game and it will go through a 2-week cycle of me sort of prototyping it and playing it, writing it in my notebook, and then as a sort of conclusion to that process, I'll type up my notes into a little rule book and maybe make any sort of rough cards or components that I need. And at that point, like, it's self-contained and playable. It's not battle tested, but like it's a thing. And so now I have somewhere to put that, and I can lay it gently in sort of in state out there on Itch. And then probably I'll do a bunch of those things. I've already done 3 and there's a 4th one about to arrive. And
You're getting
that gives me a sort of testing ground. Like if people go, oh yeah, that thing that looks really interesting, then I'll know that that's
Are you
something I
getting
should
that
invest
good
some time.
feedback from people? You're getting useful feedback?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, it comes and goes, but like when I put Rotwalden Realms of Carnage out, which is basically a re-theme of Mystic Skies. Mystic Skies was a game I wrote in collaboration with Sean Sutter during Blaster, and Mystic Skies, yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, there it is. Mystic Skies is mechanically awesome. I really love
Can I
it.
just say, just interrupt horribly, I've got these fantastic Blaster issues, and I'm going to do an overview of some of these amazing games.
Oh,
I'm not going to
wicked.
get a chance to play them all, but I want to do a video talking about these because there's some really cool indie stuff in these magazines.
Yeah. No, I'm really proud of the stuff we did there. And so
Yeah.
I'm really proud of Mystic Skies because it's a cool game. It's like a tower defense game where you have a wizard and I have a wizard, and we sort of summon monsters whilst trying to blow up the other person's tower. And it's got this really kind of chunky summoning mechanic. The spellcasters are really fast and tear about, but for whatever reason, I loved the theme of Wizards on Magic Carpets because it was inspired by my love of Bullfrog Games' Magic Carpet from the 90s. But it hasn't really landed with anyone. Like it hasn't really worked in the community. And I thought that the Relic Blade universe connection would work, but it hasn't. And so that's good. Like now I know, but I still think the
Yeah.
game's good. And so I've translated it into a more direct sort of fantasy warband game that's set in the world of Hobgoblin, which is called Rotwalden, the root world. And so by translating it into a more like
Unpronounceable name.
wizards with more fantasy warbands, then that allows, basically it says like if you have an AOS army or a Warcry warband, like you're hot to trot. There's no specific.
Well, it's hard to just sort of reach into your collection and get a wizard on a flying carpet as well. They're not quite as available.
Exactly, and so in this case, it's more just like you've got a wizard. As long as you've got a cool wizard miniature, on foot or whatever, then you get to play something. Anyway, so the point being, did I get good feedback? Well, I put that out and I put the video sort of flipping through the rule book and I put it out on itch for $5. And yeah, some people played it, some people took photos, some people gave me feedback, and that's enough to get a sense of what people might be interested about, and then I can figure out, well, am I gonna sort of turn to that next once I've got some spare time, or is something else catching people's imaginations more?
You've got this huge amount of time, of extra time now that you're working full time on this stuff. Is it hard to get up in the morning and go, I'm going to start working on games for another day?
No, I leap out of bed these days.
Excellent.
No, my problem is managing my scattered attention, because there's so many things I want to do, and I so rarely finish miniature hobby projects because I'm always like, ooh, shiny, ooh, shiny. I'm quite good at finishing design projects, but at the moment, because I haven't given myself a specific deadline for anything, I'm also just like, ooh, let's make another game, let's make another game, let's make another game.
Do you have the one in mind for the first kind of Kickstarter thing you're going to do?
I do, yeah. This is not a commitment, but the most sensible and rational thing, and the thing that I would be very excited to do, is there is a game called Perilous Tales, which is a solo kind of pulp adventure, hammer horror kind of miniatures game, which I put out into the world many years ago, and has been enjoyed by quite a few people, and there's like many dozens of YouTube videos of people playing their solo games of Perilous Tales. I brought it out before the Great Plague, and then during the Great Plague, Ash at Guerrilla Miniature Games gave it some oxygen by playing it a bunch, which was cool. And yeah, there are still people who are discovering it and recommending it. And so of the games that I have in my sort of stable of things that I haven't released yet, Perilous Tales is the one that already has an audience, and so I'm pretty confident that that one's like a good game that lands with people, and when they get it, they get it. So that seems, and also like it's a solo game, so if I put it up on Kickstarter, you don't have the barrier of like, will I be able to find anyone to play this with, or shall I just buy it for myself?
Except for people like me who don't play solo games and immediately want to know if there's a two-player version.
There is a cooperative version, yeah.
Oh, cooperative. Oh, okay.
Well, it may not be for you, but you know, you can't please all the people all the time.
No, that's not. I just can't get into solo gaming. Every time I set up a solo game, I play for a couple of turns and go bored now.
Yeah. You need
It's not for me.
you need the cocktail of the social plus you need
Yes,
somebody else in that magic circle.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I get it.
I'm not enough in there by myself.
So I'm thinking about Perilous Tales as being the first thing that I put in like a a lovely proper like Planet Smasher Games shows what it's going to do sort of a format. And I think with this one, I'm kind of planning to start a pattern, a series of like I have an idea of what the product should look like, and I'd like to do that multiple times so that over time I can build up like on your shelf there can be a row of Planet Smasher games and they all kind of look the
Ooh,
same.
nice.
And the thing is that like I love making games. I like the flexibility of having sort of cards and tokens and templates. Um, and I definitely don't want to make miniatures. I just don't want to start a miniature company. So for me, the thing that I truly want to do, and I wish that Gaslands was delivered in this way, is I don't want to publish books. I want to publish boxes with guff in them. So if you can imagine, like if Gaslands was delivered as a board game format, it would be easy to imagine, well, it's got the custom dice in, it's got the movement templates in, it's got the rule book. And maybe it's got some little cardboard constructible race gates that you use. And so that for me feels like, you know, if it's a lovely box that fits on a shelf next to your, you know, it's about the same height as these big hardback books, like that would be a lovely thing. Modifius has a lovely line of things like similar to this. So I think
to go like the kind of basic D&D box for me.
yeah, it's very much like an RPG starter set. Yeah, exactly. Because then particularly if it's a skirmish game, like you can kind of keep everything that you need in that box together. And if you go to somebody else,
I've already done that with Gaslands. I put it into a box about that size, and I've got my templates and dice and everything in there. So
yeah. And so I think that like because I just don't know. Yeah, it just seems to me like the ideal format because I own lots of miniature rule sets as books, and that's fine. But as soon as the game requires cards or tokens or something specific, it becomes sort of irritating and difficult. And also, I think there's lots of these games.
Like exactly. It's just all over the place.
I think there's lots of these games that would benefit from the flexibility in components. And the way that I'm thinking about my games, you know, if I need a deck of cards because that's the best way that the game will work, then I want to have that flexibility as a designer to include that. So yeah, so I think like I'm sort of from a production point of view, I'm thinking about it as a board game manufacturer, but as a creator, like I only make miniature agnostic skirmish games and war games and stuff. That's my thing.
I'm going to make a space on my shelf right now.
Nice.
I want you to feel
it. Yeah. And I'm lucky enough to have a good friend of mine, Glenn, who is my co-host on the Rule of Carnage podcast. And he is somewhat experienced in running Kickstarters and getting kind of card and board games published through the Chinese manufacturing. He's worked with one particular factory a few times. And so it's really good because I can feel confident that with his experience, I'm kind of not wandering straight into the midst of sharks. I will have some ability to know what I'm doing. So there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to produce at sort of later in this year something that resembles, you know, a high quality, normal quality board game with lovely die cut cardboard tokens and nice printed rule books and custom dice and whatnot. And that's cool. That's really exciting.
Yeah, conquest of the world follows, basically.
Possibly. Conquest of several thousand gamers, perhaps.
So what have you been playing? Anything?
What have I been playing?
I've been playing anything. I've been in India for a month where there is no playing. I took a set of a game I call Archaeology, an old card game. I don't know if you ever played it.
No, don't know.
That's the only game we've played, this card game. We played about 10 times. My partner Carol won about 8 games. By the end of it, I was going, I don't want to play this game anymore. I was really annoyed.
Yeah, when we go on holiday,
where for some reason one person always wins, and there's no reason for it. It just clicks with their brain or something. And there's a lot of luck in archaeology. and yet she just kept winning. Drove me nuts.
When we go on holiday, my wife and I tend to take Eco Flux, which is like the most random game ever, because it doesn't really matter how many times you play it. There's no skill. It's just like, ooh, a frog, ooh, a snake, ooh, it's raining.
That's it.
I quite like Flux, but it is, yeah, it is. It's almost bingo levels of random.
Well, now,
Anyway,
of
what have
course,
I been playing? I have been playing
wants to play it
Robot
all the
Rally.
time.
Robot Rally came out of the cupboard for the first time in a few years, and I got to show it to
Robo
some.
Rally. Oh yeah, I played that once. I didn't enjoy it at all.
I love Robot Rally
Is
as
it? I didn't do it for me. I thought, here's a classic. I'll give this a go, and it just, I don't know, that whole programming thing, and then just seeing it all collapse is just frustrating. The other one that was like that was the Vlada Chavatal game with what's it called, Galaxy Trucker.
oh yeah.
Again, really, I just do not enjoy this thing where you spend ages setting something up and then you just let it run and it all goes.
I think there's a certain kind of player who is delighted by the machinery and the spectacle. I'm one of these, by the way, in many games where it's sort of like the fact that there is a fabulous contraption that can go off and do its own ludicrous thing is as much pleasure as being able to actually achieve the goal of the game. And so Robot Rally delivers that really nicely for me, like setting everything up, pressing play, and watching everything go horribly wrong and people get pushed into.
Well, I think there's a new edition coming out, so you'll be happy.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, I'm sure it was on Board Game Geek the other day. There was a new edition coming.
Nice. Yeah. No, we had a group down the board game night that connected with it very immediately, and so I think two of the four guys immediately rushed off to get a set for their family collection. So that's cool.
I'm still playing Oathsworn Into the Deep Wood.
Oh yeah,
it's great. I love it. It was my sort of game of the year kind of thing a while back. When was it? Was that last year? Maybe it was last year. It's got 21 scenarios and we're only up to number 8, but I feel like I've been playing it forever. And I was thinking actually, because I've been binging Game of Thrones again, and it's got a sort of Game of Thrones kind of feel. It's got that gritty fantasy feel. But I just love this sort of thing where you have this one big chunk of the evening where you're doing just the battle phase and you're having this big boss battle. And then when you finish that, you pack it away and you have the story adventure stuff. And it's like a sort of choose your own adventure, but you have some choices kind of in some dice rolling stuff kind of thing, which is narrated by a strange coincidence, the guy who plays Mormont and on Game of Thrones.
Must have been the psychic connection that you.
Yeah. But the story's really good, and it's just it's the closest to a role playing game that I've ever seen in board game form.
And you find that those two elements, they're not disjointed. They actually, because it feels like there's two different games there, but for you the integration is quite pleasing.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about the atmosphere of them that goes together well. I mean, it is at the end of the story, you go, well, here we go. We're going to meet the big bad any moment now, kind of thing. But usually the story is sort of leading up to meeting that big bad. So it's sort of integrated into the story. And then you just have this really nice combat system, which is card driven and feels quite cinematic. You have people sort of jumping over treetops and doing acrobatic moves, and another person will run up to the big bad. The bad guys are usually big. There's other ones with minions and things as well, but they might run up to him and then do a slide through the legs and then attack from the back and all that kind of stuff. There's this real cinematic feel to the combat, which I love. So yeah, I'm still enjoying it. I was very lucky to get a review copy because it wasn't cheap, but even if I paid for it, I feel like I would have got really good value out of it.
Now I I've been intrigued because I keep getting out of the box the lovely miniatures for Eon Trespass Odyssey. Have you played that game yet?
I played I can't remember how much I played, but I played a decent chunk for my review. But again, it was solo, so I just couldn't,
Oh, okay.
I couldn't get set up and keep playing really. I can't remember now. I have to go back. It's been a while. That was my main problem, which is with all of those games, is that just seem to have to be set up and then just take up a huge, huge table for a year. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And also, I remember the combat system in Aeon Trespass. I never really clicked with. It was very, very fiddly, and there were lots of weird modifiers and things to remember. And I just found it a little bit too mechanical or filled with mechanics.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, like that's probably the bit that I'm intrigued in seeing the clockwork in action, because it's got that nice inverted idea of, well, what if, like a superhero movie, the more punched you get, the more powerful you get up until a point.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that in action.
That didn't really come across for me when I played. I didn't have that feeling of increasing power. And then, of course, as soon as I said something like that in review, all these people said, "Oh, you've got to keep going. You haven't gone further enough." And I sort of said, "Well, I spent quite a few hours on this now." And it sort of should be revealing that to me by now. But, it was generally like, well, stick with it. It'll be amazing. And I've still got it over there, and I intend to plunge back into it one day, probably when I'm in a nursing home and have the time. Of course, then I'll be too.
It's going to be intense with this
generation
of board game collectors moves into nursing homes with like forklift trucks. No, I've been waiting my whole life for this moment.
Don't fit them. Gonna have to take tiny games into nursing homes. Don't fit them. Gonna have to take tiny games into nursing homes. Yeah, they can't fit it. I'm just hoping that by the time I go into one of those, that they'll have, my virtual reality chair. I'll just lay back in my, moving virtual reality chair, which could sort of, go up vertical if I want to pretend that I'm walking and everything like that. And I just have my big goggles on, and I'm just in another world all the time, adventuring in fantasy lands or science fiction adventures or something, while my poor body is slowly falling apart in the real world. Surely we can do that. I did get a PlayStation VR 2 recently, a few months ago, and it's gone a long way. It's jumped a long way. The VR stuff is pretty cool. It's got a long way to go.
I think we were talking about this last time we chatted. I also I picked one up last year because I worked for a big video game company and I wanted to know more about the technology, because I hadn't used any VR for like 6 or 7 years. And I think it hit me at the wrong moment, but it's possible that the proclivity was there already. But yeah, I found it both terrifying and anxiety inducing. And once I'd used it twice, I was like, I don't like this object. It frightens me. And
what? Jeez.
Yeah.
So you gave it a good run then?
I gave it a short run, and it just wasn't for me. Just like, I think it was like playing video games in an environment where I can't see my drink or like scratch my knee or whatever, but also like, so it was inconvenient compared to just having a controller, but also I found the experience of being inside that world anxiety inducing. Like, it was sort of, a combination of sort of disassociation and vertigo, which I found deeply.
Some people are really badly affected by the whole vertigo thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have vertigo when I'm out walking on mountains or anything.
No. I was playing a zombie game, and it was terrifying. They were, because they're behind you, and you go, ah! You're looking around everywhere. Where the hell are they? Ah! It's really scary. And another thing that's changed is you used to be sort of disembodied hands in space, and now you sort of look down, you've got a body, and you've got arms, so you feel sort of more grounded in the space. But yeah, especially scary games can be terrifying to the point where you just, I don't want to play it. It's not fun being so scared, because being scared can be fun, but it can also be scary,
stressful,
pleasant. Yeah, I'm playing the driving one at the moment, which is what's it called, Gran Turismo, and I just can't get into it because it's just like driving a car. And I just, there's no game element to me. It's just, okay, right. I can see how it really appeals to people who want to learn how to be a really good, really rally car driver and want to rally, whatever it's called. I know nothing about driving. And want to experience all the different cars, people who get off on cars, basically, which I don't at all.
As a kid, we always had Microsoft Flight Simulator in the house. I guess my dad was just curious about it.
It's just like that. It's like a flight simulator, yeah.
Yeah, and I had I think it was like Flight Sim 4 or Flight Sim 5 had a plane designer, so you could build a plane and design like the wings and all this kind of stuff, and then you could try and fly it, and you would try and take off, and it would immediately crash and stall and burn. And that for me was the endlessly exciting part. I liked the tinkering, but I couldn't understand the. It's exactly as you say. There's no game. It's when the simulation is when the dial is pushed so far in the direction of simulation that you lose kind of any semblance of gameplay.
Yeah. It reminds me when I started playing Gamma World back in the distant 80s. And we used to, because, in Gamma World, obviously, it's post-apocalyptic, so your characters would find technological items and all the rest of it. And they had this chart, which was like a flow chart. I don't know if you remember Gamma World, but it had a flow chart that you followed, and you go through all these steps rolling dice, and it could come out to, you learn what this is, or it could come out to it explodes and your face blows off. Depending on where you went. But I would also make kind of dashboards of things too. So if the characters found a sort of crashed spaceship, I'd actually draw the dashboard of the spaceship with all the knobs, and then they'd say, "We press that button," and I go, your face falls off. Roughly the same thing, except it was just more real.
Yeah, I think I'm quite thoughtful about this, because like when you like miniature war games themselves came from quite a simulationist point of view, and so there's a lot of tropes in minis games particularly which push in that direction of like simulating. But I think most mini games these days are like very much first and foremost games. But then you look at like mobile games, for example, and they're like quite often very pure expressions of game mechanics, and so they're like that dial is pushed so far in the other direction of like it's game first, and maybe we'll sort of put some theme on top somewhere.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of something that we were going to talk about, which is sort of this thing where I, as I said, I was away for a month, and I came back, and I thought, I really want to play some games. I haven't played for a month, blah blah blah. And then I looked around, especially at the miniatures games, and I just thought, geez, it's a lot of work. And I suddenly realized I'd got used to it, and being away for a month really changed my perspective. And I'm sure it will just slide back into how it was before, because it's a long-term habit. But this idea that I put so much effort into playing these games, especially miniatures games. So if someone says, can I come over, let's play a miniatures game, I do all the setup, I put all the terrain out, I've got all the miniatures which I've painted, and I look at it and we enjoy the game. And sometimes I look at it and I think, we just played that for 3 hours, but to get that table and to get that experience probably took 5,000 hours. It's this huge amount of effort. And I don't regret it, because I absolutely love playing miniatures games, but this overhead of miniatures games and the amount of work, it's homework almost that's involved in playing miniatures games. What do you think about that?
I think a lot of things about that. I'm intrigued by one thing you said there, which is it sounds like in this situation quite often you're the person bringing a lot of the the weight of effort is very much on your side. And
yeah, so always have been.
Yeah, it might be that there's like a games master, games host kind of specific bent here. But I think
I should jump in there and say that one of the guys, Andy, who I play with, he's been in a few of my battle reports. He's probably going, but as he watches this video, because he's
all right, Andy. We know you paint your armies.
Yeah, we know. Yeah. Cut it out, Andy. Come on, we know. All right. So I'll just point it out. But most of the time, certainly in the past, I did everything. So yes,
right. And so there's a specific, I think, bias there. So I think that like you're also cute. So there's a loop that we go through when we want to play a miniatures game, and we have to do like some mental preparation and then some physical preparation, and then we play the game, and then we quite often spend some sort of analysis time after thinking about the game and tweaking our list and thinking what miniatures or terrain we want to change for the next game. And I think that that's quite similar to some other games, particularly deeper games, except for this physical preparation thing is very unique. Except for you, because you will always make a rules summary for a board game. But like most people don't do a bunch of physical hobby activity.
And redesign the bloody cards.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost every single miniatures game I've got, I've redesigned the cards.
Exactly. So you're a bit
that time.
you're a bit on the outside here, but I think that for many people, there's a combination, and it's like a spectrum that you can be slightly on one way or the other. Like for some people, the getting through the miniature painting and the learning the rules is kind of like the reward is that you get to play the game, and the game is the reward. But for lots of people, like just doing the activity is more of the point. And
No, I know, and that's the hobby thing, and it's all about the hobby. But I mean, do
yeah,
you
and
ever
so
sort of find yourself the hobby crossing into homework?
yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, it's like I I like I like to have a game set up so that I've got a motivation to get through that hobby loop. But I actually like that whole loop. Um, I like to go through that whole loop as a sort of activity. So it's not the game specifically or the hobby specifically that's like more fun for me. It's like it's that thing where I go to friends, hey, let's play a game of blah, and then we're like, okay, but let's all bring new crews, and then we'll all paint new things, and then we'll be sharing our work. And at the
I've never
beginning,
had
we'll be
that.
thinking about which crews we're going to pick and splitting up the factions, and then we'll be
Yeah.
sharing our in progress work, and then we'll get to the game day and we'll play the thing, and we'll be like, oh,
I think
looking
I'm
at each
actually
other.
missing out on a big chunk of the hobby, really. I've probably always missed out on a big chunk of it because I never played with people who did that. There was never that sort of group sense of
Yeah, that
doing that. And
community.
when I see like campaign game systems, I think, gee, do people actually have the time and do they get together to do that? And I can see the enjoyment of it. It's like, getting together
Mm.
regularly and playing a game and everything.
I
So
mean,
yeah, I'm probably
my
by
game my
myself.
like good gaming buddies, we're all busy folks, so we probably only meet up in person twice a year, but we will always make sure that like in advance of that we're like, well, we're going to play these two games, and everyone has to bring a painted force for it, and so that gives
Yeah.
us a motivation. And it's that like social, it's a kind of like peer pressure, but it's also a sharing thing. It's a community thing. So that's how I get through that loop, because when I am just setting out to do something myself, I'm very scatterbrained about it. And so I have, just enormous numbers of half finished projects, because I'll get excited about something, I'll work on it for a bit, and then I'll get excited about something else. And unless there's kind of social pressure, and I mean that in a positive way, to finish something, to have it ready for a specific time, they just languish and they never really get finished. Um,
Yeah. My incentive to finish things is usually because I have to make a video about it. Or
right, which is
yeah,
actually, that's
it keeps me
it's sort
going,
of
I
a
suppose.
social pressure, or that's a little bit more like audience performer kind of related.
Yeah. I think also, and this is probably revealing more about myself than I should in public, but being a perfectionist is a bit of an issue too, because
Mm,
I always wanted everything to be perfect,
mm.
to look gorgeous. So if someone showed up with sort of dodgy painted miniatures, I'd go, what are they doing on my beautiful table? Which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
not
yeah.
a good. It'd be more flexible than that. So that also reminds me that there's a new. We were going to mention that Age of Sigmar is being uh, churned out for another edition soon.
Oh
Do you
yeah, yeah,
play
yeah.
it,
It's
Mark,
it's
at all?
edition roundabout time over.
Yeah. Do you play it?
So I played at the early days of third edition. I think it's my most recent. Yeah, no, I've got the third edition rulebook. I played some third edition Age of Sigmar.
Wasn't
Um,
that the last one? Third edition?
I think that's the most recent one. Yeah, that's the one.
Right, okay.
So I have played a little bit of it, and I've played a fair bit of 10th edition Warhammer 40,000 recently. And from the announced video of Age of Sigmar, it does look like they're sort of using some of the ideas that they've put into 10th edition 40k. There's like a combat patrol looking thing, sort of
I
a
love
lot
the
of smooth
combat patrol
downloadable
thing in 40k. I love the combat patrol thing in 40k, and if they have that in Age of Sigmar, which as I mentioned before, I think is called Spearhead,
Mm.
that is super cool because fast games, just pick it up, play it, don't have to do all the list building crap. It can just get straight into it. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah,
And they
for
also
people
said
that
there's going to
for
be
people
some
that want
kind of
that easy
rule
in.
change. They said there was some kind of mechanic or mechanics to sort of have more ramped up and more dramatic endings to games, which I found intriguing.
Yes, I caught on that. They said something akin to there's an underdog system that ensures that the end of your games remain tense. And I'm very curious to find out what that
Mhm.
is because I watched that video yesterday, and because I'm working on a textbook about games design right now with Glenn, I had literally been editing a section in our textbook that said you quite often hear games saying anyone can win until the last move as if that's a good thing. And then we go on to discuss why we perhaps think that that isn't a good thing. So I'm
Wow.
intrigued about whether this is anyone can win till the last move. Well, if anyone
Yeah.
can win till the last move, like why did I practice to get better at the game, and why did I play
I
the rest
didn't
of the
interpret
moves
it
leading
like
up
that,
to
but
that?
yeah, if it is like that, that's terrible. I was hoping it was something that made the ending dramatic, regardless of whether someone was winning or not. But if it's a catch-up mechanic, oof.
Yeah, that I mean that could be it. Like if it's a like so one good mechanic that you find sometimes in games is if you know that you've lost and you've kind of been logically eliminated in the parlance, then there's some alternative reward that you can head for that's like, okay, if you can lose but also do this, then you'll get more campaign points or whatever. So
Yeah.
there's still an interesting thing that you can shoot for, even if the game itself has kind of been thrown for you. So maybe it's something to do with that.
Mm.
But you don't know. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I
Yeah.
think the thing that the thing that I found I think the thing that I found challenging returning to Warhammer 40,000 after quite a long break, although I had been playing Age of Sigmar previously, is that um, well, so there's Goobertown Hobbies recently did this video, which I completely resonate with, where he was basically saying 40k is not for him because he's a casual gamer in terms of like the number of games of 40k you can get a year, and 40k is quite a hardcore game in terms of the amount of thinking and prep that it requires from you. And that resonates with me a lot because although I've got like a local dad who wanted to get into miniatures games last year, and so he was like, can we play 40k? And I was like, yeah, sure, okay, we'll get into 10th edition, that'll be interesting. um he wants to play fairly regularly, and we play kind of once a month. Even once a month is in no way often enough to get under the skin of Warhammer 40,000 in a way that I can enjoy playing the game, because it's just a very complicated and deep game where um, the every time I set up to play, I sense this yawning gap of knowledge underneath that I don't have any idea what his stuff does. And he's very excited and is watching YouTube videos and reading Tactica, and he's in that honeymoon period of
Yeah.
behaving like a tournament gamer
Ah,
would
the
do.
young.
And so he'll come with some crazy list with all these different synergies, and I'll just try and do a thing
Wow.
like move a guy and shoot his guy, and he'll be like, oh no, because I've got these three pieces of clockwork that interact, so it means you can't target him over 12 inches, and if you do, your
Yeah.
shoelaces immediately untie. And
Yeah.
that's fine if you want that level of depth and mastery, but
Especially
like,
with his dance.
yeah, but I don't. And so 40k, I think we probably should have been playing Combat Patrol, but he wanted to play the full
Wants to go
game
deep.
because in some regards,
Yeah.
like, it's easy to see Combat Patrol as like the cheap get out version, where like I bought this enormous rule book plus these massive tomes of additional rules. Like, why aren't we playing with all that stuff I've
Yeah,
purchased?
and the problem is, I suppose, if you're playing Combat Patrol, you're kind of stuck with the same Combat Patrol all the time, aren't you? You're not
Yeah, that's true
experimenting,
as well.
creating armies
Um,
or anything.
yeah, so I think that my experience with that game has been fairly frustrating because I I'm not a very competitive player, but I do like to have some idea of what is going on. And there's just a
Yeah.
lot of like, I will put my army out, and then he will like say random words as he'll mutter things as he's rolling his dice. And
So
also,
as a game designer, you must be constantly thinking, oh, why did they do that? And why don't they fix that? And oh, that
yeah,
isn't
I
right.
mean, it's been fun as a games designer. I think there's lots of things in 40k that I like and appreciate. I think the mission system is interesting. I think it's very abstract and video gamey, but the Leviathan mission pack, the way that you kind of have evolving secondary missions, like, it keeps the
Yeah.
game very dynamic.
So what do you think about the fact that here we are getting these, very dynamic short games, and then they turn around and release basically very early versions of both games. I mean, Warhammer the Old World has come back, and Horus Heresy is basically what, third edition Warhammer 40,000? I don't know.
Right, and Imperialis being like first edition Titanicus.
Yeah. I mean, is this to shut the old grognards up, or why do you reckon? Why do they do it, do you reckon? And I read an article the other day on the Warhammer community site, and they've just got huge plans for Warhammer the Old World. And I just thought, are that many people playing Warhammer the Old World?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's 100% like nostalgia sells, and we as the affluent part of the hobby audience, this age group grew up in the 90s playing those games, and so and even in some cases grew up having just missed those games, and so the nostalgia for a time that I just missed is even, I think, stronger than the nostalgia for
maybe
the time.
They waited for an exact age range from when it stopped, or with the heyday or something. And
I mean, whether it was that calculated
exactly
or not, I think it's obvious that this is the period where, like, if you were 11 in 1992, then now you are like 40 something, and you have kids and you have disposable income, and that's to me that feels very like a very sound sort of business thing. But also I think there's a pendulum. I think there's a pendulum that swung inside Games Workshop where they eliminated all of the sort of secondary specialist games in order to focus on their core product line. And now the pendulum's swinging back, and I don't know that there's any specific logic to that other than companies of a certain size tend to change their strategy in a sort of swinging pendulum over 5 or 7 years. That just, you can see that in lots of different industries, in lots of different companies. And I think here, somebody has managed to sort of sell internally the vision that, you remember when we used to have lots of different games and we had a range of different products, we should still be doing that. And that, which
I frustrated with Legions Imperialis though, because there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of units coming out, and to a lot of extra stuff.
I mean, from my perspective as a gamer, I would have muchly appreciated that these smaller scale games deliberately chose a different product strategy, and they were much more self-contained, and they were much more like, here is the game, here are all the units for the game, and we will release the models for these units, but you can
sometimes I think that they did the Adeptus Titanicus game, and they really did a different strategy with that one. They made it super expensive, and they made all the stuff. That's when they started this whole idea when they did a campaign book, and then some models would come out for the campaign book and all that. And they've sort of followed, obviously that made a lot of money because they've followed that strategy for a lot of things. And I find it very frustrating because it's
somebody mentioned
stuff out.
Somebody called it the GW book club, which I laughed a lot at, because in the 90s I was in a book club, and for those people who don't remember book clubs or weren't alive at that time, a book club was a thing that you paid money to be a monthly subscriber to, and you got a catalogue of discounted books that were like half price books or whatever, but you had to buy a book every month. And so I would be there like looking at
I never fell for that.
The well, yeah, I can't remember whether it was me or my mum or whatever, but like, there would be like new fantasy novels in hardback, or there would be like the Encyclopedia of X-Files, and I'd be like, oh, I've got to have the Encyclopedia of X-Files. But the point is that you had to buy a book every month, regardless of whether you wanted it or needed it. And the same is absolutely true for GW at the moment. Like, if you want to stay on top of any of their games or multiple of their games, you're going to have to buy at least a book a month. And that might be fine, that might be nice for you. I find it, because of the pace that I play the games, I find it incredibly frustrating because the game is constantly running past me and away from me, and when I get my stuff together to be like, right, let's play a game, I'm like, whoop, it's slipped away from me again.
Well, I hate the fact that you see a model that you want to buy. Okay, that's a cool model, and then you realize that you have to buy an $80 book just to get the stats for that model. Though I have to say, to Games Workshop's credit, they are releasing a lot of free stuff now in terms of stats. For the old world, obviously, there were free army books without all the fluff. And they seem to be going to do this. They're going to do it for Age of Sigmar as well, which has released all the army things. So they're finally waking up to the fact that some people want to play the game without having to buy 20 books.
Yeah, and I think like it, it's sort of it's an unavoidable trait of, as much as video games have to, live service gaming in video games, they have to have a river of content, they believe, to keep people re-engaging with the game. And the same strategy is working obviously very nicely for GW, which is it's a live service game where, essentially you're being asked for, they're not really microtransactions, but like you have to drop a certain amount of money each month on the new product in order to stay, up with the game and stay kind of logically involved in the game. Whereas, I am, like you, one of those gamers that is in lots of different spaces and wants to play lots of different games and would prefer a stable object that I can purchase and enjoy at my leisure, and that artifact is like self-contained. And when I, if I put it on the shelf for 6 years, when I come back to it, it's like, oh, okay, this is brilliant. And lots of people will say, well, obviously, yeah, lots of people will say, well, that can be true. You can still play any of these editions of Warhammer that you like. But because it's a live service game, the assumption is that like there will be other humans that want to play that game, and so those humans will assume you're playing the most recent game with the most recent rules. And
well, that goes back to my last thing, is that I don't have to deal with that problem because I set up everything and do everything. So
yeah, you can be like, we're playing what I say.
Yeah, it's 1843 today. You have no say in the matter. Just learn the rules, come and play.
Yeah. But I will say,
I love dead games because I just love the fact that it's self-contained. Nothing's going to be added. I can collect all the models if I want to, and it's not going to change. I think there's something really satisfying about that.
I think one thing I'm super interested in, and I should probably pick up the current version of Mantic's game. I'm really interested about where
Firefight.
Yeah, I'm really interested about where the best sort of 40k like game for using your 40k miniatures.
Firefight is good.
I'm
going to do it. It's going to be my next battle report. I've been putting it off for ages, but I've got to do a battle report. I played it the new edition once to get used to it before that, and it's smooth, it's fast. The rules receded into the background. That
nice. And is there enough gameplay? Is it like juicy enough?
The only problem that I picked the wrong scenario for the game that we played. I played the first edition and it was good. For this one, I foolishly picked a defensive kind of scenario because I thought it was nice and thematic.
Oh, but one team had to be a bit passive.
Well, yeah, the defenders were the shooty army, so they just sat behind the thing and shot, and they didn't have to come out because there were no essential objectives to capture or anything. So I was the orcs charging towards this line of very shooty marine type figures. So that sort of made it crash and burn a bit. But it was, it was still obvious that the system was good and worked well, and it was fast. And no, I was really happy with it. And
yeah, because I've read One Page Rules version a couple times and sort of debated getting my 40k friend into it. But I sort of, as a games obsessed guy, like I look at it and I go like, yeah, I know what this is going to do. It doesn't have any sort of particular.
Oh, there's nothing revolutionary there at all. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fine. It does what it does. But I'm looking for something a bit more juicy.
Yeah, they've stolen a few things from old games like AT43, which I just mentioned, which is the whole thing about measuring everything from the leader and everything, which it was ingenious when it first came out, and it's so much easier because when you're moving a little squad of dudes, you just move the leader and then put everything within coherency of the leader. It speeds things up to an unbelievable degree. Not sitting there with a tape measure going yeah. Little stuff like that, and firing and shooting and everything all from the leader. It works really well. But yeah, nothing world shattering. It's just I was just impressed by the fact that we played our first game and a couple of turns in the rules just went and we were just having fun. Yeah.
Cool.
That's good. And also they've just done that big campaign for their epic scale version as well, which I think is pretty well. That was happening while I was overseas. So I'm hoping they'll send that to me to try out as well because it looks really cool. It's got lots of. The thing is that it's got what Legions Imperialis doesn't have, which is lots of factions. It's got the Ratmen and the plague and all the different things, and that's what I wanted out of an epic game, which is like the old one. We had orcs and chaos and all the different things instead of just humans versus humans, which heresy is.
Yeah, no, same for me. Same for me. When I got Adeptus Titanicus in 2019, I immediately just proxied everything for like orc vehicles, and we've played orcs versus Eldar using the same rules.
I miss that variety. This Horus heresy thing, I do not find inspiring at all.
No, me neither.
Anyway, but of course, the irony is that the original Adeptus Titanicus was Horus heresy. The original game. The original Adeptus Titanicus, the original game back in the 92 or whatever, was Horus Heresy because that's where Horus Heresy started because they had the same model design and they didn't want to do a different one. So they had the same one fighting. So they go, oh, we better make it a civil war, which is brilliant. It's actually 10 o'clock here. Past my bedtime. No, it isn't. But it's getting on. You've still got a day of game designing to do, don't you?
I've still got a day of games designing to do. Yeah,
to work.
I've got two books to hand in the next couple of weeks, and one of them is a textbook that I'm working on with my good buddy Glenn from Rule of Carnage, and the other is a new. I think we talked about it before. As a new game for Offspray's Blue Book series called Pacific Command, which has been out in beta for a while, and I've had lots of lovely feedback from the players, but. Yep, I've got to finish that. I've got to finish the last 3 scenarios and do some diagrams for it.
Oh, that's good. Nice to have commissions.
Yeah, it's good. I'm hoping. So Pacific Command is a slightly weird game, but I'm hoping that it has a lifetime because it is a stable, interesting subject. And so if the game is half decent, it should be able to sit there for a while in their catalog without going stale.
Nice. Well, I suggest audience out there of wonderful Esoteric Order of Gamers people that you head on over to Mike's YouTube channel and his Patreon channel. As I said, it's in the show notes. And find out what he's up to. Planet Smasher Games. He makes very cool stuff.
A deliberately overblown name for my
Sounded very subtle to me. I thought it was very, very subtle. Could have been Universe Smasher. I mean, I called my design company Universal Head. That wasn't exactly subtle either, was it?
I know. I always think of Zardoz when I think of your company.
Yes. Yes, I know. Maybe, yeah, it could have been about them when I saw it for the first time. Sean Connery running around in a nappy.
Yeah.
Very disturbing. It tends to stick in the brain. You can't get it out. If you haven't seen Zardoz, people go and see it. It's very strange.
Enormous floating head floating towards you.
Yes. Oh. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you next time. Bye for now. Bye, Mike.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Peter.